morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Heidi Deckermauer, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. We appreciate you joining us and are excited to share with you the presentation, The Discovery Fidelity Scale by Steve Hall. Just a bit of information, housekeeping information before we go. Today's presentation runs approximately 50 minutes. Although our question and answer period will begin after the presentation, we'd like to welcome you to type any of your questions into the question box. You can type them anytime that the questions occur to you, but we will be answering them at the end of the presentation. We'll do our best to address all the questions that people have. Rest assured, though, that if we aren't able to get to all the questions right away today, we will take them down and we'll make sure that they're answered offline later. Let's see, a little bit more housekeeping. We're going to let you know a little bit more about the CRCs, and we'll give you some information after the end of the Q&A period so that you know what the next steps are for obtaining your CRC credits. We're fortunate also to have Steve Hall today here to answer questions after the presentation. If you happen to have any other questions after the webinar or anything afterwards, you can go ahead and still email them to us, and we will get all those questions answered for you. If you do run into any technical problems, you can go ahead and use the chat box. So Q&A is going to be for content questions about the webinar, and the chat is for maybe any technical difficulties or any requests that you have during the video. So I think that's all the housekeeping. Again, we welcome you to the presentation, and we'll now get it underway.
Hi, I'm Steve Hall, and I'm here to talk to you about the Discovery Fidelity Scale. I'd like to certainly thank Virginia Commonwealth University for having me here. So let's just start talking about what this piece is. So Discovery is the initial, what you do to begin the process of customized employment. It's the initial phase. It's the one that gets the most attention. It's the one that people talk about, well, that really is different than what we did with supported employment to get folks in integrated jobs in the community. And so that's what Discovery is. Why we did the Discovery Fidelity Scale is because what we were hearing was this. When a vocational rehabilitation counselor or a regional funding agency, or even a supervisor for a employment specialist who does this work, when they got the product, the Discovery product, they would ask, is this good? Should I pay for this? These folks did, this agency did 4 of these Discovery products for us. We owe them this many, whatever, hundreds or thousands of dollars. Is this okay or not? So by hearing that, by many parts of the country, what we decided at Griffin Hamilton Associates was to do a Discovery Fidelity Scale. My job at Griffin Hamilton Associates, we work in 43 states, and my job there, I am the director of disability policy, research, and financing, particularly helping states with rate setting for employment services. So that's what I do. And primarily the avenue to do that is this scale. So let's talk about what we're doing. anybody who uses the Discovery Fidelity Scale must sign an agreement with us. It's actually with Utah State University and Griffin-Hammes to agree to participate in a research study on the Discovery Fidelity Scale for this reason. We have not established the reliability and validity of the scale to date. Now there's lots of unbelievably promising and exciting things that I am just dying to tell people what's happening. Some of it beyond even my wildest dreams, and they can be pretty wild at times. But it really is, it's going very well. And so we want to be sure, my role is to be sure that reliability is there. That is, when somebody uses a scale, what score they would put is similar to what score somebody else would put. And when somebody, that is, somebody puts a 3 in one state, we want it to be the same score, a 3 that somebody would put in another state, or a -1 or a 2, whatever that score is. And Tim Reeson, a Utah State University professor, his role is to look at the outcomes, what happens after the application of the scale when a supervisor of an employment program at a provider agency, when they use the scale to help interpret the quality of the services that they're given, what happens to people with disabilities in real time, that is, jobs, money, how long they're employed, all kinds of the usual type of both immediate and longitudinal data, and about who those people are that are receiving customized employment. So why we're doing it is to improve the employment outcomes of folks with disabilities. Let me talk about a few other things. So there's a reliability and validity testing we're doing. To use the scale, anyone can download the scale now, at any time, by simply going to the Griffin-Hammes website, and there will be the latest version of the Discovery Fidelity Scale. We ask that you not use that scale without the DFS, the Discovery Fidelity Scale Authorized Administrator training, which I do along with a GHA associate. So it's a one-day training on how to use the scale and how the interpretations of each of the tenets and the scale work. The scale, we first published it in 2016, and then the latest, I don't know if it's the next slide or not, the latest article is coming out now in the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation, and they've been told that's one of the lengthier articles that's been published there, but it's we think it's a good article showing what other people who are experts in customized employment, what they think of the scale, what they think may still be some of its weaknesses, and certainly what are its strengths. So just some bullet points I want to emphasize about Discovery is that the employment seeker cannot fail Discovery. Employment seeker is a leader of their own discovery process. It's who you're actually working for. Discovery begins with engaging family, friends, and the community supports. Begins that way, not on the end. It begins with that. Begins, as you'll see, with the home visit. In Discovery, this is important, in Discovery, those who assist the employment seeker achieve a much greater understanding of that employment seeker. Those who assist achieve a much greater understanding. So another way to say that is this. It's to fill your head. In other words, it is for you to learn about the person, you to learn how that person can work at his or her best. It's not to analyze him or her. It's the opposite. It's for you to learn something. It's not like just doing whatever you can do. What we oftentimes do now for the employment of people with disabilities is we try to do, given the circumstances we got, let's try to do the very best job we can. What Discovery gives us the opportunity to do is to do the very best job we can and to change those circumstances through the discovery process and later through the job development. process to change what would have been the logical outcome of folks with disabilities. Because what we know is this, is too many citizens with significant disabilities who do get employed, and certainly not enough do, to say the least, but do get employed in jobs that other people don't want to do, jobs that are repetitive, jobs that are require very little skill, jobs that can be taught, or even not taught. That is, it's simply cleaning, mopping, wiping, doing something that might be of use for folks. So what this does is it tries to get the person in the best job. In other words, the sorts of jobs that other people want to do. It's about financial stability. It is about making a living wage. It is about working and making, not just, well, the outcome is not just with customized employment. Well, we got him or her a job. Isn't that great? Because too many people then are also working in the community, and then subsequently that very same day going back to the day center day after day. And this is about being in the community in a permanent basis and making money doing it. So what Discovery does is it finds out these things: what the person can do, what the person likes to do, and what the person needs help doing. Discovery does not present a balanced picture of the person. What it does instead, it's biased for a positive picture of the person. We are absolutely going to find the very best job that we can for this particular person in their particular circumstances. What Discovery does is it helps the people who are working on behalf of citizens with disabilities know how best to proceed. So it's not about volunteering. It's not about work activities. It's not about assessment. It's not about judging what he or she can do. So what Discovery is an alternative to evaluation or assessment. Yes, vocational rehabilitation will oftentimes say, well, we're going to bill and fund the Discovery portion of that as an assessment within vocational rehabilitation. Okay, that's cool. Nothing wrong with doing that. But understand that this is an alternative to that traditional judging another person alongside somebody else. That is going to, say, a big box store, or going to some place and having them run through a series of tests and see how they do. Or going to or being a student and folding pizza boxes as a part of leaving a school, and then when it comes time to try to find out what job they want to do, you go ask somebody who works at the place a person is folding pizza boxes and say, well, how is he? Do you think he can do this kind of work? It's not any of that. What it is instead is that, and it's not that we're saying, no, don't ever do those things. We're saying we think a much better thing to do is use a thorough discovery process, and I'll get that in just a moment. Discovery is also for adults, and it's for children in school age. But the only purpose of Discovery is employment. It's not readiness. It is certainly a wonderful thing to do, but its only purpose is employment. If the person's in public school, the purpose of Discovery is employment. Not a temporary job, not a trial job, not a volunteering job, not employment. And when people can be employed who are in public school are in the evenings, on the weekends, during holidays, during summer, the long spring break, and certainly during the very long summer break. And in some school districts, in some states, can be a part of, if it's written in the student's individual education plan, then it can also be a part actually occur during the school day. But that depends on the school district, school place, if that option I just mentioned is. So, but the key point to learn is this is not about finding out really cool things about people and wow, we didn't know all this, and boy, this is going to be wonderful, and I guess that someday this all might be used to help him get a job, or her to get a job. It is not that. Instead, what it is to, it's a beginning process. It's a part of a referral for customized employment, and it is about immediately starting job development right after discovery. It is a tool that the customized job development specialist, the job developer, will use to ensure employment. Okay. So it's not a standalone service. It is not job development. How many times we preach, do not jump to the job. What happens, what has historically happened, whenever we've gone to an employer that may have job openings, and that's not what you do with discovery, but if you job openings and somebody wants to hire somebody, like, oh, good, we just abandon all processes and go right to that. That is not how it works with discovery. What discovery is happening is you're trying to learn more. You're trying to find out more. You're trying to expand opportunities for citizens with disabilities. If you can see this conceptually, you're trying to drive towards uncertainty. Not towards certainty, not trying to hone in and whittle down to what is the essence of this person, and it means that they can do just this. It's the opposite. With discovery, what you're trying to do is expand the possibilities that citizens with disabilities have. So and it's uncomfortable a lot of times for professionals because it's a drive towards uncertainty. It's a drive. It's so that you absolutely are leaving no stone untouched in what might be possibilities for this citizen. Again, there's guidance to do that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later about how it might happen. So that's that it is. So it's not a standalone service, and it certainly is not job development. Job development is what happens after discovery. So what discovery is learning something more. Not the citizen that has a significant disability, not the employment seeker learning something more, but those who are working on behalf of him or her to help them get a good job in the community. It's learning, that is who is learning something more about that person. They want the person reveal the job seeker at his or her best. And it's a determination, not an evaluation. It is a determination on, and it's not semantics. It's a determination on how best to proceed. What is it that we're going to do to ensure these citizens have the best shot at getting the right job, the job that lasts. So discovery, I've explained that, I think, in this introduction, and so you got it, that's the initial step. What's fidelity? Well, fidelity says that you're going to do something that evidence shows is actually how you should be doing it. It's not just how somebody who is really bright and really smart and really comes up with great ideas about how to do discovery, and you should do it that way because I said so. That's not what fidelity is. What fidelity is actually proof that in spending the taxpayer dollars to help in the habilitation and rehabilitation of this citizen using psychosocial means, that is customized employment, that what fidelity says is that why we're doing this day, why we're doing this moment or this half hour is because we know that it has fidelity to best practices that will likely end up in a good outcome. Multiple good outcomes, including wages, hours worked, length of job, and a whole host of other outcomes. What is scale? The scale is the toughest thing to maybe conceptually understand, but what a scale is degrees of correctness. So the scale has a -1. In other words, don't do this. It has a 1 score, a 2 score, and a 3 score on the multiple tenets that are in the scale. So on the tenets, you have a choice of scoring it one of four ways. If you score it as a -1, it's like, well, this is what we're doing, and the scale is telling us we shouldn't be doing that, and we are doing that. That happens a lot. A 1 is we are doing this in a way that is acceptable. It meets the fidelity criteria. We are doing what we're supposed to be doing for this citizen that will likely help them get a job. When we're in the home talking with the mother and father or the person with disability or whoever else may be there. We're looking at the neighborhood in a way that we believe will most likely end up with the successes we want. That's why our fourth version of this will come out in late fall, and why as we learn more and more, as we're getting data and information in, the scale that has changed 3 times. That is, we've learned, oh, not this way, oh, a little bit. So tweaks, changes, more than little tweaks about how it may be changed, slight variations from that article that is coming out just now. So degrees of correctness means, I try to tell folks, a -1, if you have to put it on an A, B, C, D, F scale, a -1 is an F, a 1 is an A, a 2 is an A+, and a 3 is an A++. So that's why we try to see the degrees of correctness. Also, by the way, if you score on the scale a 2, then it means it has all the components that are in 1 and all the components that are in 2. If you score something a 3, it means it has all the components that are in 1, all the components that are in 2, and all the components that are in 3. The development history is, I think, I've gone through that. It began in Florida with in the development of the scale, and its first field work implementation was in Southern California. And then, well, I'll get to the other states that are involved in the scale now, but it's now more states are wanting it. Why they're wanting the scale is simply one reason. So now when we spend the taxpayer dollars to help us, a citizen with very significant challenges in employment get a job, then we're paying for something, we now have a way to be able to tell whether the person that we're paying, the contractor, the provider of services of the customized employment service, if in the initial very, very critical and crucial phase of discovery, are they doing the work to fidelity? How close are they coming to doing this sort of work in a manner that is going to make a difference? So California, Utah, South Dakota, Missouri, Michigan, and Virginia are the states now that have contracted for the implementation of scale. California and Utah a little more of a head start than the other states. Training on how to administer the scale. So this again, the training happens over a 1-day period. Then a vocational profile or discovery staging record, employment plan is written. In other words, a discovery process is completed. The scale is then given to the program manager or supervisor in a provider agency, or sometimes directly right to a vocational rehabilitation counselor or to a vocational rehabilitation counselor supervisor. And then that person and I go over the results of that scale, asking them, you got the product, and this is what you think the score should be on each of the tenets related to discovery. Tell me how you why do you put a -1 here? Why did you give this one a 2? We go over each one. So what I'm doing there is helping, by doing that with every single person, it helps them have that reliability, so I can be certain that people are scoring it right. Here is what the truth is that the first scales, they're not so pretty. The first time you do it, the numbers are kind of all over the place. There are some that are right, but it's, people get the idea it's an A, B, C, and they don't want to be sure I get the best score, or, this. And then once that all kind of sinks in, then the second round through with the scale, it is absolutely beautiful, because there's the biggest jump, the second time given. We now have some people that now are on their third and fourth discovery fidelity scales completed, and it is really a beautiful thing. In fact, I did one day before yesterday, absolutely no changes at all. I had nothing to add. It was done absolutely perfect, and great results too. So who should administer? Again, anybody who's here's who I'd like to have in the room when we do the one-day Discovery Fidelity Scale training. Who I want in the room are people who make funding and administrative decisions about who is eligible, who has access, who gets resources to participate in customized employment. I also want people that are, and sometimes, so that kind of covers everybody that I mentioned before. That is the person that is the sometimes regional VR supervisor, area VR supervisor, the supervisor of employment services at a provider agency. Sometimes it's been even executive directors of different provider agencies have taken the Discovery administrator training. So those folks in the room. After that, we go over the scale, like I mentioned, point by point in reliability, resubmit it again, and then at some point, usually within 2 to 6 months, then I return on site to a particular state to help them with whatever the issues are. At that meeting, and it's quite a meeting, then every employment specialist that can possibly get there is there too. And you get to find out what's really going on in a state or a community or area, and what are the real barriers for folks with disabilities. And all that so informs the scale about what do we need to be focusing on to ensure that folks are doing well. And how we began to scale to begin with, by the way, it was reading every bit of research ever written about anything to do with employment and discovery and customized employment, interviews with Mike Callahan and Carrie Griffin and another dozen people that have been working with customized employment for years, focus groups with experts on customized employment and practitioners of customized employment, interviews with families. All of that went into the original creation of the scale. We follow an internal review, a board-approved process that's been approved by Utah State University, and that's who gets the data and does the analysis of it. And then we continue to improve the reliability and validity of the scale, and based on the results, and follow up with folks on the changes. Just kind of the inside, the scale is quite comprehensive, and it is not something to hand to, I don't think, people can do what they want, but to hand to an employment specialist and say, hey, this is what I'll be looking at, be sure you have everything there. So I did create something called a cheat sheet that in a very simple, usually one phrase, says in shorthand what each tenant is, and states have really loved that because it gives the certified, the person that is the bona fide administrator of the Discovery Fidelity Scale, it gives them something to give to somebody to say, and by the way, I know you know how to do discovery. I know we've had training. I know that. These are the things I'll be looking at. These are the in short the tenets that I'll be looking at to determine whether I think that that what you're doing is what we're wanting you to do. So also the cheat sheet, rather than saying I'm going to stand back and I'm going to evaluate your work, it's saying no. Change things already. One of the biggest surprises to me has been, in working with states, has been how the Discovery Fidelity Scale has immediately started impacting policy, customized employment financing, discovery financing, hourly rates, how it began immediately when they saw the tenets of the scale. Now, in other words, we already see what's coming down the road, and what it's going to look like is too many -1s to make us feel very comfortable. The scores are not going to be what they should be. And again, in this presentation, I will not be all of a sudden putting up the scale and going over it point by point. You should in combination with this, take a look at that scale, and then in more detail, then consider administrator training if you want more detail. But otherwise, the Griffin Hammes website. Okay, so the Discovery Fidelity Scale is the first section is authorization and access. What authorization and access, what we're looking for there is that about who has access to customized employment. Because again, it needs to be a part of a referral to customized employment. Discovery needs to be. So that's one of the tenets. In other words, in the Discovery Fidelity Scale, there is a systems fidelity component, and then there is a services fidelity component. What you see on the screen right now is the systems part of the scale. So first is authorization and access. In other words, the CMS made it very clear in their guidance on both financing and who should be a part of customized employment, where taxpayer dollars should be going. It made it very clear that persons that are eligible for support employment are also eligible for customized employment, and people need to make a decision about that. That customized employment is not just for, as one VR director said to me in a state, then it is not just for, as they said, the most severe of the most severe. Instead, what customized employment for is, who's eligible for it is anyone that's eligible for support employment is eligible for customized employment. With that said, then states are making decisions who gets support employment and who gets customized employment. But with that said, that the access to that tenet is seeing who's getting it. So what's the data showing? The data is showing that too many of the people who get access to customized employment are young citizens, never over 40 years old, almost always under 30 years old, who are not in a day center, not in a sheltered workshop, not in a work enclave, not in other words, they're not in a group home, that they're not getting any other services. So someone made the decision that maybe we should try customized employment. And I think that's not the way to do referral for services for citizens with disabilities who may need that. It needs to be based on need, of course. So know that the early data we're getting is looking like that customized employment is going to a very, very narrow group of people. Not only do they have almost always some of the most significant disabilities, there are people who are without any other services. In financing, that's another tenet in the DFS systems fidelity. Financing, the key word in there is a word called accurately. It needs to be financed accurately. That is, that it needs to follow the Rehabilitation Services Administration and CMS guidance on how it should be followed. So what they have said is that rates need to be set using a reasonably principled analysis. And the courts have ruled clearly that states cannot just say, well, let's try this rate, see if it works. The courts have ruled clearly states are not allowed to take government money and to experiment and just to see if it works and see what the market will bear. A government is not an ordinary purchaser of services like an independent corporation may be. Instead, a government needs to have a reasonably principled analysis on what they think that the rate of payment needs to be to achieve the desired results as has been authorized by Congress for the use of the dollars. So then financing then needs to be such that it has so that it discourages turnover of personnel. You're hiring personnel that are capable of learning how to do things very, very well. And I'll just stop short there, knowing that in every case, once the use of the Discovery Fidelity Scale has helped states to be able to justify the sorts of rates that many people in the central offices of developmental disability services, mental health services, and particularly vocational rehabilitation services have known should be paid to providers, and providers have known should be paid to them on an hourly basis to do whatever the service may be, but have not had the justification for that, and this is a part of that. Also, that guidance says clearly, if you choose milestone payments, if you choose some type of a performance type of payment for financing, this is also part of the scale, then the guidance by the federal government is it must also translate into an hourly rate. Doesn't mean it has to be paid by an hourly rate, but it has to be translated into an hourly rate. So if somebody's paid $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 for discovery, whatever it may be, then that needs to translate into an hourly rate based on how many hours of discovery is usually whatever may be the case. And then on the discovery providers, it's about how to get to best utilize that service. I myself was a provider of services for 17 years. I was a state developmental disability, intellectual and developmental disabilities director. I was a state commissioner of mental health. So I certainly know a lot about providers and what providers need, but most of my career in life has been as a provider of services. And the most important thing there is regarding the financing, it needs to be well so that there is not high staff turnover, because you cannot do these more complex methodologies like customized employment without having reliable staff that you can depend on. So that is also a part of the scale. So discovery is always the initial process in customized employment and the service referral. So in other words, there should be no such thing as a referral just forever, a referral just for discovery. It should always be a part of a customized employment referral, because the only purpose for discovery is for a person to get a good job making a living wage. So the purpose of discovery, the next step following discovery, the immediate next step following discovery is job development. Persons eligible for SE are eligible for CE, as I mentioned, and there is the accurate financing means, in the words of the federal government, a reasonably principled analysis of hourly costs. And I mentioned about the CE personnel. Okay, so this is the fidelity pieces. So the fidelity tenets. Some of home and neighborhood visit, I think it has maybe 4 tenets. The discovery activities has a couple. Informational interviews does 2. Vocational profile may have 1 and 1. So there's different. Each of these have different numbers of tenets embedded inside of them. But let's talk about the home and neighborhood visit first. Discovery is always going to begin in the home. Well, what if they don't want me to come to the house? Sure, you can then have it in some other place besides, obviously, the provider agencies would be the least desirable place for that visit to happen. A lot of things can happen in the home that are going to be quite helpful. So home neighborhood visits means not a drive-through, not a look on the internet to see what the neighborhood is. Instead, it's walking. It's finding out about the neighborhood. And in the upper reaches of the scale, when you get into scoring a 2 or a 3 on the neighborhood visits part, it means that you actually walk that neighborhood with somebody who knows that neighborhood well, like maybe the politician that represents the area, maybe like the priest if there's a Catholic church in the area, or the minister of another church in the area, or maybe a person that is the leading real estate person in the area, or maybe another person that has invested quite a bit in their business in the area. That is, that you're not just looking at the neighborhood through your own eyes, but through other eyes. That's the detail of the neighborhood visit. In the home and neighborhood, then, it's not sitting down and saying the scale is again, that's the -1 when you just start off with, hey, guess what? I got a lot of questions to ask you, and I'm just going to run through my list of questions, and I'm going to ask you a question, I'm going to give it, and here's an answer. Question, answer, question, answer. I'm going to sit there and transcribe that. That is not on the fidelity scale as a recommended way to conduct a home visit. Is not interrogation, it's not an interview, it's not filling out a game of 20 questions, filling out a questionnaire. I know I'm being rather cavalier there, but I'm saying that you need to do more listening and less questioning to really have a conversation to find out more about, because what you're also building is that trust and interest in, certainly with the family and their son or daughter working at a good job in the community. It's about walking with others, which I've described. And then in discovery activities is actually seeing both in the home, and it can be in the home, and it can be outside of and often is outside the home at a business, not a business that you're thinking about placing the person in. That's not, you're not jumping to the job. Never, never, never jump to the job. But what you're doing is looking at other places, and you're doing discovery activities that are, something says, well, maybe this will be a good place. It doesn't have to be a place you've ever been to ever before. It should not probably be a place you've ever been to before. And just say, can we have him do this part of this job, because we're trying to learn more about him. And what you're trying to find out is what this says. You're learning how best to support the person. That is the gold in discovery activities. When you learn how best to support the person, guess what? When they actually get the job, and then they need to learn more skills to the job, which every job you need to learn more skills, or when things change to the job, and every job things change, guess what you've got now? You've got back in the discovery plan how best to support this person, how this person learns. That's what the discovery activities, so what you're trying to do there. Informational interview is one of the most brilliant, I think, and wonderful ideas ever to happen for how to get people with significant challenges in employment jobs. And that is that you're not there talking to an employer looking for a job. In discovery, what you are doing is you're trying to expand possibilities. You're trying to drive towards uncertainty. You're trying to just tell me about, he likes whatever it may be that's in this particular company, because you know that particular company does whatever it looks like this citizen has said over the discovery process to date, through both the activities and in conversations with the home and neighborhood visit. You're in a business and you're asking them, tell me about people who do this kind of work. What do they need to know? Tell me about other places that do this kind of work. Tell me about other things about this work that maybe I would never know, or know, most people who don't do it don't know. But it's not asking questions like I just did. Instead, it's about having a conversation with usually the owner or the principal person at the business to find out where are all the potential places to work, and what are all the potential jobs inside of that possibly the person can do. Do you see how you're expanding opportunity, you're expanding maybe other businesses that you're going to go look at now based on that first informational interview, or other areas because of whatever the person's vocational theme, or maybe the person's interest that comes out of the discovery process. You're expanding possibilities, not trying to narrow things down. In the vocational profile narrative of the discovery fidelity scale, what you're doing with that is this. In my life, and maybe in yours, you've seen discovery plan after discovery plan, or individual rehabilitation plan, or individual education plan, or whatever it's been, where everything just seemed to work out fine. Look at this. We went from discovery, we went to the home visit, and oh, it was perfect. And we went to the neighborhood, oh, it was perfect. And we went to the discovery activities, and oh, they were perfect. And we went to the informational interviews, and oh, it was perfect. And all the way through, as if the whole world often works that way, when we all know it doesn't. And what we're looking for in the vocational profile is that moment when, and it sometimes doesn't happen, but often does. It's like, we should have probably considered, wow, we found out some more information. We didn't have any idea his aunt was such a big part of his life. Oh, we didn't have any idea of his interest in whatever that may be. Oh, had no idea that interest. We just didn't see it. We didn't know anything about baking. He never mentioned anything about baking anywhere. And suddenly, here it comes, right in our face when we're out there doing an informational interview, he says, well, that's what I've always wanted to do in my life, or that's what, I love to do that. And by the way, that's what I look at this, I even had the skills to do it. All of a sudden that comes up. So just know what the vocational profile narrative review is about, what you're really looking for on the product that the scale's looking at, that is the Discovery Employment Plan. What you're looking for is where they've said, we needed to go back and do something because this wasn't about just getting the job done, given the money we got and given the time we got. This was a human being trying to get the very best job they can. And so we respected that person enough that we went back and did the work necessary to make absolutely certain we're getting that person the right job. Obviously, then you might get, as you might guess, one of the tenets is, does your funding source allow extra funding, more funding than originally proposed, not a ton, but enough that it will give you the resources to go back and to do some other work that you found out. We need, because if not, then you see that the pressure is on getting something done given the amount of money you got and given the time you got. And that's no way, I think, to treat a human being. A human being, this person is, what the promise was, this was supposed to be a really good job that I want to work in a really long time, that's going to make me a really significant amount of income, the kind of job we all want. That's what the promise of customized employment is, and we don't want it shortchanged by suddenly we got to make everything just look like everything's smooth and working out well. This is where you want to see that uncertainty, that mistake that's not a mistake, it's something beautiful where somebody acknowledges we need to look at something else. And then the employment plan, the key part of it is the contacts for job development, and I really mean that. I mean the place where, based on the vocational profile, all the work we did and the Discovery staging record or whatever tool we're using to record all the processes that I've just went through with Discovery, then the end result is what should be contacts for job development. That is, customized employment is an integral process where that employment plan then leads to contacts, which means not just, well, go over to, Michelle's, whatever Michelle's sales, or go to Michael and Strauss, whatever they do. No, it's about go to that place, talk to this particular person. It's real contacts for job development. So the job developer no longer says, thank you for all the good work you did to Discovery. Really appreciate that. I'll just go back and go on automatic and do the usual job development I usually do. This is customized job development that needs to happen now. And in customized job development, then is very different beyond what the scope of today is, but it's a very different process than customary and ordinary job development. So, and a key to that integral part is having those contacts with the names, the contacts, the phone numbers, the addresses, down to begin that job development process. Last thing I want to mention is what's next, and it's the customized employment job development fidelity scale. So that's what we're working on now. That should be out so people can at least begin seeing it and making a decision whether they want training on how to do job development, customized job development with fidelity. I'm hoping by this fall. So we'll see about the timing. But we've the same process I just described with research, talk with experts, and focus groups was followed in the development of the customized job development fidelity scale, and so anyway, we're hoping that will work out well. So if you have questions and you have information that if you look at the scale, certainly first place you should go now is to go and to download off at the Griffin Hammes website and get yourself your own copy of the scale. And if you have from what I've said here, if you have more questions, certainly you can contact Griffin Hammes & Associates. The principal person there is our executive director, Beth Keaton. And then here is my contact. If you do contact about any work that you would want Griffin Hammes to do, then I'll be just referring you right straight to Beth Keaton, so know that. But if you have questions about the scale or anything you've heard today, then you're very welcome to write me or thoughts you might have about it. So thank you very much. I'm so glad to be here today to share this with you.
Well, I just want to thank Steve for such an excellent presentation. There was so much good information in there. I'm glad that we had a chance to share that information with you. And also, we have Steve Hall here, and he'll be able to answer our questions in a few minutes. I think that before we take some questions, Steve, would you perhaps like to say just a few words about yourself, introduce yourself to the folks, and then we'll move into the question and answer period.
Sure. So I'm Steve Hall. I'm the director of policy and research and financing for Griffin Hammes. And what Griffin Hammes does is helps people through customized employment get good jobs in the community. And we work in several states. Since excuse me, since this video was taped, the job development fidelity scale is out, and you can go to the Griffin Hammes website and get it now. Also, the first training of the job development fidelity scale for a state will be in California next week. I'll be there for that. So we're in quite a few more states: Florida, Virginia. I guess we have Florida, Virginia, Rhode Island will be in this year, and we're now in Missouri and some Michigan and some other states that maybe weren't mentioned. So yeah, just more important is I'm just hanging around for whatever questions you may have, and it can be about anything regarding customized employment and particularly the discovery fidelity of the process known as discovery.
That's fantastic, Steve. Thanks so much. Right now, I don't see any questions in the question and answer queue, so I'd like to encourage folks to put any of their questions that they have in there. Steve, while listening to your presentation, I heard some really great things in there. I thought I'd just talk to you a little bit about those while we're waiting for the questions to come in. The personal discovery that you're doing with the consumers at the beginning, that just seems to me to be a great way for you to build, or for the counselor to build a really good trusting relationship with the person with whom they're working. It sounds like it's more getting to know a person and getting to find out about that person rather than, as you said, trying to just find them a job and just kind of not necessarily getting them something that they're excited about. So how do you feel about that relationship building?
Well, it's critical, and because you really actually know who this person is. And, so customized employment is not just putting people in jobs they already know how to do. I mean, there's going to be putting people in jobs where they'll need, teaching and training and learning how to do that. And then customized employment uses a consultative model of job development, which is a whole other conversation, which has, again, discovery lays the groundwork for that. So you really know how best to communicate with a coworker who will have the primary role. I mean, so many years we placed people in jobs that other people didn't want to do, and jobs that weren't very weren't the best jobs, I'll say. And I was one of the main people who put people in those jobs, because that's what we knew at the time, and it was wonderful, a great alternative to shelter deployment. Yeah. Today we can put people in great jobs, and when you're in a really good job, then the person that's naturally was going to teach and train that person to do it is a coworker who's done that job. And we've made it so that just the people are that the bridge to community life has just been very narrow, and it's only as wide, that bridge has been only as wide as the employment specialist. But
Yeah.
once you use a customized approach, you're widening that bridge, bringing other citizens, other basically coworkers on that bridge with you to help teach and train the person. So.
Well, and with just anybody, but I think sometimes folks that have some difficulties, sometimes there's not as much agency. And I think that when you're talking to the person and getting to know them and finding out what their preferences and what they're interested in, that really gives them a lot more buy-in to, to pursue something, because they feel like they're really being listened to, and that, there's a good chance that they'll get a job that sticks, rather than, as you said, just, finding a job that was a step better than sheltered workshops, but really actually helping them find something that they're going to like to do. And if people feel like they're listened to, then I think that they get after their goals a little bit better. And
state vocational rehabilitation counselors, I over my career have worked in 43 states. So, and they couldn't keep a job. So yes, I'd have no.
Yeah.
But what they, just say is that we want people to have real jobs in the community, but they get these jobs pretty quickly, but then they're 6 months later, 8 months later, 10 months later, they're out of the job. And what customized employment does is it ensures that is the absolute right job. The ideal conditions of employment is something you'll hear anybody that works for Griffin Hammis repeat again and again. What we're after is find those ideal conditions of employment, and those types of jobs are the kind of jobs that some of us have had in our life, which are jobs that we stay at. We stay doing that type of work.
Right. And, with any job that people get, there are going to be, good days and bad days. But if you're doing something that really you fit with, then it's easier to, to take it as it comes, and know that there are going to be good and bad days. And just, any kind of job that I've been involved in, there are parts of it that you really like to do and you'd maybe almost do for free, but then there are the hard days, and those are the ones that they pay you for. But helping them find something that really suits them, it just feels like all the obstacles that you tackle at work are much more handleable if it's something that you really like to do.
I want to emphasize this one thing. The Discovery Fidelity Scale is not how you learn how to do discovery. What we've found, each particular tenets we find are just critical to be sure they're included. But how you learn how to do discovery is having experts like people that work at Griffin Hammis Associates. I mean, these are people that have been out there and face-to-face mentoring and working directly with people, every single day, about how to go about doing that and modeling how to interact with employers and that.
Right.
That's how you actually learn, not just kind of, what my role is only about trying to help folks do the critical components that are more likely to succeed. But it's that training of that judgment and that nuance and mentoring that really makes the big difference.
Well, and that's hard to just impart through training. It seems to be one of those things where you have to try it and maybe try some things that don't work. But forming that judgment to find out when, to decide when it needs to be used. That's really important. I do have some audience questions. Thanks everybody for checking in with us. Kevin asks, does a person need to go to a training before they can administer the scale?
Yes. Because what happens is, this is a research project, because that's what's happened, is that a lot of places do customized employment, a lot of places do discovery, and and they do it in so many different ways. Well, this is the person taught me. I thought that's what they meant. I thought I did it. I thought I was doing things right. And then you find that, and they find out repeatedly once you apply the scale and once you have the training, it's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I knew a person that was doing this customized employment for 4 years and was considered, by many excellent. And she said, I really didn't understand how to do customized employment until actually I became a DFS administrator. I had been not only doing it in ways that where I was getting inferior results, but so was the people I was teaching and training as the agency supervisor for that. So that,
Right.
so yes, so what folks need is that. So a provider agency can contract with Griffin Hammonds for that. States can contract with Griffin and Hammonds with that. We also, work obviously with the federal government. I've been a subject matter expert for the U.S. Department of Labor, as other Griffin Hammonds associates have been also. So we have, close ties with federal government and, financing and training and all that. So there's just a lot of ways to get to yes and how people can become DFS administrators. And it's just a one day training, but we found it's very critical. And then there's that 1 day of follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Training, which I'm doing the job development fidelity training next week, and then the following week I'll be doing a Q&A follow-up meeting with another state because I've already done the DFS administrator training. So, but all that is about staying in that contact with people actually doing this work for a really extended period of time of 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, maybe sometimes even 15, that ends up making all the difference. And most of my work, except for two times folks see me, is done over the telephone, directly involving an actual person with disabilities that they have completed discovery with.
Sure. And that's kind of the way things are going a little bit, having things more online. It can make it more convenient for some people. There are always some people who are still on the other side of the digital divide, and that's not easy for them, but it sure is handy when it works.
Yeah.
I have another question. Atiana asks, are you seeing greater retention in using this with individuals and them staying longer in jobs?
Well, so the data collection is both we collect demographic data, we collect the data that has to do with the implementation of the scale, and then we collect longitudinal data. So all of those are a part of that. And then we're not ready yet. We'll be publishing a paper. There's people chomping at the bit to get that paper out of the folks. I'm actually part of the holdup, in that I want enough people, that somebody can't say, well, yeah, we know you did a great job with, this few of people, but what about, all these other people? Well, we're trying to make that data rich enough and big enough. So that's the first thing. The second is that we're ecstatic. And I think people are going to be, really thrilled, because when you start addressing both these systems pieces, and which is what the fidelity scale does, which it has to do, we talk money. When you start talking money, you start talking rates, you start talking about turnover, you start talking about experience. You have that pieces. And you talk about the actual tenets that have to do with the scale. That combination of a conversation, not, oh, no, we don't talk about that, we leave that to later. Mm-hmm. Then what you have is everybody going in saying, okay, I'll make this type of investment. It's like a VR director in one of the states we work with, like he said, we tried this stuff before, but now this makes some sense. This makes a lot of sense, and I think I can get the VR counselors to go with this, and he sure did.
Right.
And so, but he was in the room. This is a state VR director, and it's not a small state. He was actually in that room talking about this. And of course, obviously, when somebody has that type of role, they people tend to listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have, that top-down support. So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. I do have,
Oh, but I'm sorry, but let me get to the answer.
oh, go ahead.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry. So no, we don't have publishable data yet to show about longitudinal outcomes. What I got is data, because I'm actually know whether the person still has their job or not, because I'm actually talking with people, and the data is pretty fantastic. I would say that it is. I did not believe it because you have just different things that happen that you think, well, surely because of just circumstances, you would have folks still not having their job when you looked at 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, 18 months, but that looks really good.
Super. I do have a few more questions.
Yeah.
Diane has asked, is the use just with those who are in supported employment, or are there job specialists using this technique with others in the VR system?
Well, there are some state directors that are starting to realize, particularly now that we've had some conversations about the job development fidelity scale, realize, and of course I did focus groups, different parts of the country about job development. So starting to realize that one, let's see what the law says. The law says the law says anybody that's eligible for supported employment is eligible for customized employment. And then once you start down that path of customized employment, understanding how different it is by eliminating comparative evaluations, instead have a discovery process, how different it is to have customized employment, as compared with traditional job development, how different it is to have consultative job site training versus direct job coaching. Then when you start realizing all those pieces and differences, people begin to say, well, tell me, what about for others? And I won't stretch this too far because I could talk a long time on this issue. But I would just say this: we have a real problem with men over 50 years old in our nation who lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And good things are not happening for them. In fact, horrible things are happening. As you know, probably from earlier, I was a mental health commissioner for a state. And so I have a lot of firsthand experiences knowing what happens to people when they lose their employment. The chances of if you're over 50 and you're a male and you lose your job in this particular culture we're living in right now, then you often lose your health insurance. You often lose if you are married, you end up divorced, and you often lose your job. And then the suicide rate is beyond anybody's wildest imaginations now. I just saw data yesterday that I saw bad data before, but I've never seen data like this that talked about how many real lives are ending with that. So I think customized employment is a great big deal and should be used for people well beyond what it's used for now. Not everybody agrees with me though, but that's what my opinion.
Well, and that almost seems to be a public health issue. I mean, if you're losing that many people, it's that's insane. And I personally know people to whom that's happened, and it's devastating. I mean, losing work in the first place is pretty devastating for people. But if you're that close to what you thought might be the end of your career, that it can just wipe people out. So I think that, in my opinion, it sounds like a great idea to extend that to the people who are.
Well, we have to remember that what supported employment and what customized employment are psychosocial rehabilitation methodologies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it is. In other words, it engages the citizen. What the brilliance of supported employment, so many years ago, and even in the late 70s, it started. When it first began, mostly again began some other places concurrently, but of course the leaders in it there at Virginia Commonwealth University is that it changed the dynamic and made employment about an interactive psychosocial model versus one where you're taking the person aside and assessing them and then just, well, never mind about what all was wrong with that. But anyway, so just know that this is just a continuation of that monumental shift that came about and led to the 1986 Support Employment Amendments to the Rehabilitation Act.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I do have a few more questions. Jessica is talking about an upcoming interview where the focus is going to be defining and implementing a customized employment fidelity instrument. I think, Jessica, since this is such a very specific question, and I want to make sure that we get to everybody's questions, I've taken this question down, and if that's okay with you, I'll send it along to Steve so that he can talk with you one-on-one about this. It's a great question, but we need to make sure and answer questions that will help the broadest amount of people. So I've recorded the question, and we'll pass it along to Steve when we're done here and have him answer you by email.
Great. Happy to.
We have the next question is from Tracy. If our company teamed up with you, would we still have to go through vocational rehabilitation?
Well, the important thing is to call the most important person to talk to is who as I said in the video, who I'd refer you to if you call me about how to get with Griffin Hammis is Beth Keaton. I mean, talk to Beth. That's B Keaton, BKEETON @griffinhammis.com. So it's BKEETON @griffinhammis.com, and then you can go to our website and certainly and see the scales and see everything about Griffin Hammis. But that's who. I don't know if I missed the question, but that's how to begin the process of going about this. So the answer is, do you have to go through vocational rehabilitation? Well, so the answer is no. You don't have to go through vocational rehabilitation to how to learn how to do the scale. It just is, we have been very successful at getting vocational rehabilitation, developmental disability services, mental health services, who have been sometimes not as willing partners at different times, depending on who the director is and who the state and who the governor is and all that. Mm-hmm. But we've been very successful at getting folks to become partners, either once again or for the first time, and partners meaning funding people to deliver this. But so the answer is no. There's no criteria specifically that you need to have vocational rehabilitation involved.
Steve, thank you for that. I typed BKEETON @Griffin Hammis. Is there a dash between Griffin and Hammis?
Not in its name there is, but and most people forget that. Even I forget that all the time.
Right.
but not in the it's just Griffin. Just straight Griffin Hammis is one word.
Okay.
Not even a space in between.
Okay.
It's one word for that.
And I'm just sending that along as the answer to Tracy's questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Folks, you can go ahead and take down that information within the question answer. Perhaps we can have Jen send that information along in the chat too. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the question and answer, and hopefully we can get it over to chat as well. Okay. The next question that we have, Kevin asks, do you have a question where you will be doing trainings in the future?
Do I have you said question, do I have a schedule, or what to me, what is the question?
Yeah, Kevin is asking, do you have a schedule where you'll be doing trainings in the future? Is there, I think it's more of an accessible schedule for just anybody, not necessarily the states you said you were going to be visiting.
Well, what ends up happening is so no, we don't we so that there's not really anything like that. What usually happens is um, sometimes it's a provider, but usually it's a state. It could be but it can certainly be a provider. Says calls Beth and says, "Hey, we'd like to learn about customized employment. What it is, tell me how we can do that, you know." And so then that conversation begins. So there's not a schedule. There's not a place that we go to teach people about how to use the scale, because we really want people to know how to do. I mean, much more important than learning the scale is knowing how to do customized employment in the most effective way according to best practices. So.
Fair enough. So if Kevin was to want to talk to you about that, if Kevin, if you're the administrator, you would want to contact.
I would say this: if Kevin is in California, Utah, Michigan, South Dakota, Missouri, Florida, Virginia, or Rhode Island, then he is in luck, because in the next over the next in 2020, then I'll be in all those places. And Iowa in April, so I'll be in all those places. But as you might guess, that because of the intensity of it, then the number of people that can be in any to learn to be DFS administrators, because that's what is happening, is that is fairly small. It's not, you know, a big audience type thing.
Right. That you need the personalized attention to really get the nuance of that.
Yeah.
If Kevin is not in one of those states, as you said, could he contact Beth and
contact Beth? I mean, and Beth is extremely responsive for you know, any email, but you know, Beth does travel to other countries to talk about customized employment. So so she is extremely busy, and she talks. If you think I talk fast, you should see how fast Beth talks. I think Beth and I both, you know, when Beth and I have a conversation, nobody can understand what we're even talking about. Anyway,
well, you know, better to get all that information out, though, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to miss it.
But Beth is the key person, because she would know much more than I about, because I know. Yeah, see, I left out Texas. I know we're doing work in Texas. There's Beth has her list of places we're doing things much larger than mine. Pennsylvania. See, I'm forgetting places already. Yeah.
Well, you know, we're putting you on the spot, so sometimes it's easier to have the whole list in front of you. But
Georgia.
You know, who knew they were going to ask you which states? I mean, they have such good questions. Thank you, everybody. I have one more question right now, and anybody else, if you have questions, now's the time to go ahead and put them in the QA box. Bonnie asks, who funds your research project?
Who funds the research project?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have, you know, originally it was the Governor's Planning Council of Florida.
Okay.
So they helped us, and then most recently it has been United Cerebral Palsy of Southern California, and because we have we've had a long over a decade long relationship with them, then they were able to have the resources to be able to literally help us and frankly the country do things that in most countries would absolutely be done by the federal government. But and like with supported employment, when they had the implementation grants of each state got $500,000 to do these kinds of things. That has not happened with customized employment because of just how our government has been since the 80s. But someday I think we'll go back to that, and more of it will be you know, government financed. But So right now, that's who's helping. That's who's helping me help me pay for the work that I do.
Yeah, keeping the good work going.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I don't have any more questions from any
Great.
of our audience members. So last call, folks. One of the only things, Steve, that I was that stood out to me that I was interested in, one of my previous jobs, that going out into the community and building those relationships, it seemed to be such a very important thing for folks. Where I worked, we called it community mapping, so that counselors would go to different places and again form relationships, so that when they did have somebody with appropriate skills, maybe if that place, the places where they had relationships, that might not necessarily be the answer, but they would at least know, they might be able to put people in touch, because when you strengthen those relationships and build them and make them healthy, then everybody can kind of help everybody else. So getting that network and the relationships and knowing the community. And I did have another colleague talk about the fact that, especially with younger people using technology a lot, the importance of making those personal connections has become even more crucial as time goes on. So yeah, that popped out to me, and it seemed like it goes back to relationships a lot of the time, with some of these, with being able to find the supports that are going to assist people the most.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're I can't speak about it because we're just written into the proposal, but there is a proposal to develop an app around all the things we're talking about, and because right. that is even myself, just the use of the whatever they're called, anyway, a cell phone, but to use all that's there. It makes a lot of sense to try to do this in a way that people can have access to information and about how to do things readily available. They can literally have it in their pocket. So there's a lot of work going on there. And if you're going to get to the if you're going to get folks, and boy, their data is fabulous about people who are today under 30 years old and their interest in making the world a better place. It's like baby boomers like myself always thought we were the champions of that, but wow, some of the stuff looks like the new group of folks coming along are going to be just fine, and boomers like myself can just go take a seat over here. And I think we're going to be in great shape when we finally completely give the young folks control about this, because boy, they seem to have the right values and interest in doing good for people.
Yeah, and I found that interesting in some of the conversations lately, about boomers. But boomers started a lot of the social movements, and as an Xer, I see that work was started during that era. The folks helped with civil rights. A National Organization for Women was started in 1970, and some of the organizations that kind of came out of the boomer generation, and that work was started. So I'm glad that we have a lot more tools to help spread that around. And you're right, millennials have talked a lot about wanting to help people have better chances and things be more equal. And it's important that we have people with disabilities as one of those groups that is getting representation and is getting a fair shake at having competitive integrated employment. It just enriches the community, and it helps them, and it helps the community too. It's great. It's great that the boomers started it. We got to keep the ball rolling.
Well, as it was said a long time ago, once folks understand that we all are the temporarily abled. There's not such
Oh,
thing
yeah.
as a them that's the disabled out
Right.
someplace. We're something different. It's like, no, by
Mhm.
time, age, just life, every single person becomes either they die or on the way to death. Most
Uh-huh.
100% on the way there become a person with a disability in many different ways. And
Yeah.
so once people start understanding, oh, wait a minute, this might be a good idea, and we
Yeah.
should pay attention to some of this stuff for ourselves,
It
then
might be me.
yeah, change.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think that's all that I
Great.
have for questions and some just discussion points on my own. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jen, and she's going to talk to you just a little bit about how you can get your CRCs from participating in this program. Jen, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank
We hope
you.
you all enjoyed today's webcast and the Q&A. If you are in need of the CRC for today's webcast, the link that I had just added to the chat box contains steps to request the CRC. This can also be found on our webcast page within our website at projecte3.com. You will also receive an email tomorrow with these instructions. It usually takes a couple weeks to receive the CRC attendance verification form. If you have any questions about CRCs, please direct those to projecte3tc@gmail.com. And I also want to remind everyone that next week's webcast is on the effectiveness of customized employment for transition age youth with disabilities, presented by Jennifer McDonough from VCU. Ready?
Thank you, Jen. And with that, I would like to thank you, Steve, again for joining us today. It was a great, rich conversation and an excellent presentation. So thank you so much. And also thank my co-host, Jen. Thanks for helping us out with the information about CRCs. And finally, I want to thank you, our audience. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope that we'll see you here again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.